When the Lake by Locals began this project a year ago, one of our main goals was to find and record the oral histories of the remaining survivors of the winter of 1951-52. With the help of Leona Allen, I met Nancy Brandi Cutler, who in turn helped me connect with other South Shore survivors, Su Barkley Van Hoosan and Kathy Nelson Peters. Thank you, Nancy, for helping us so much with this goal for our project.
Su Barkley Van Hoosan. I am now 80 years old, and I've lived at Tahoe since 1946. That's when we moved there, and I lived there full-time until I went to college in 1962-63. At the time of the big snow, as some people call it, we lived above Tahoe Sierra Market, which was my stepdad's business, and we lived in an apartment above it for the first 6 or 8 years of their marriage. And it was really great because I could walk to school through winters. The school was down near the Y intersection, a little 2-room schoolhouse with a bell. And we got to take turns being the bell monitor, so that was kind of fun.
My name is Nancy Brandi Cutler. My family spent the winter of 1951-52 in the Vikings home castle. We were the caretakers and lived in the caretaker's apartment there. And that was the first year that we lived in Lake Tahoe.
So I'm Kathy Nelson Peters, and my family moved to South Tahoe in the summer of 1945 when I was 10 months old. And we lived on Highway 89 in a Bodie Martin house, which is now a bar. And so anyway, I was there in 1951-52. So during the winter of 51-52, we lived in a 2-story house on Kybers Avenue that was built during the war. And we also had a garage out in front, which we lived in while our house was being built. And so during the winter of 51-52, we didn't shovel the roof of the garage, and it became our little ski hill. The trouble was there were a lot of pine trees around. And we also had a toboggan. We had a sled as well, and I could never understand why we had a sled because the runners would always sink in the snow. But the toboggan didn't, and it would go a good, I had a good clip off of the garage roof. Only problem was there was this big pine tree. And so we instructed anyone who was visiting that when you came to the pine tree, you leaned to the left. Everybody had to lean to the left so that we would miss the pine tree. So Dottie Merrick was our guest one time, and I just have this strong visual image of her. And she sat in the front. I don't know why we let her sit in the front. But we came close to the tree. Everybody was leaning to the left except for Dottie Merrick, and she was leaning to the right, and we crashed into the tree. And that was the end. I'm glad it wasn't the end of Dottie Merrick, but it was the end of the toboggan. So we had a front porch that came over the front door, and it extended over the whole one end of the house. And it was just like a cave. You went in there, and I always felt it was mysterious in there because it was so dark. And I remember making snow cones. Get milk, probably powdered milk. So we would mix it with sugar and vanilla and put it in a glass, and that was our treat. I also remember that you didn't venture far away from home because your boots would get stuck in the snow. We didn't have fancy-dancy boots, and we had open-ended boots. So if you stepped out into fresh snow, you would likely get stuck. And once your boot got stuck, it was really hard to get it out. And then the snow would all come into the top of the boot. I remember several times taking a long time to get my foot out of the snow, but I learned to stay on the packed snow. Just like we had to stay on the trail to get to Tahoe Sierra Market. You stay on the packed trail.
So was your market where everyone got food?
Until we ran out. I think there were 3 grocery stores open that winter. One at State Line, one at Globin's. Was Globin's open?
Cecil Capel, who later became my dad's partner and had a variety store.
My dad and Harvey were partners in Tahoe Sierra Market in the beginning. Harvey Gross, yeah. Harvey married my dad's sister, my stepdad's sister. Llewellyn. They had a house where the parking lot that became a parking lot on the side of the store. And they moved the house up to Harvey's Wagon Wheel, which was a one-story affair with wagon windows. You remember that?
I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah. So my dad bought Harvey's half, so it became solely owned my dad.
I remember the day that the snowplow came, the new rotary snowplow came by our house, and that was a big deal. And I also remember the day that the tow truck finally came and pulled our car out of the garageway after we had shoveled a lot.
Drove down to Tahoe Sierra Market that didn't have any food left in it.
Oh, but that's another story.
That's another story.
The shrimp boat story.
Yeah. When the roads finally became open, people were getting pretty hungry. A truck was scheduled to deliver food to our grocery store, and about 40, 50 people turned out at the market to greet the truck with the food and say shrimp boats is coming, their sales are inside.
So my dad came home from that party. It was quite, they stayed there quite a long time. My brother went along too to help out. And they picked up Frank Merrill, who was a good Mormon, and he did not drink, but I do think he drank that night. So my dad comes in the door and he's still singing. He doesn't sing well, but he was still singing Shrimp Boats Are Coming. I have the sheet music to that song. It was like, and my mom was not real happy with him, but he was very happy and we were all happy to have food again.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Couple of weeks.
For a couple weeks.
You couldn't drive around.
We only had one bus. There were only about 400 year-round people.
And so we had our telephone, a crank telephone, and Dorothy was our operator. And so she kept us all informed of anything, not just the big winter. But when Carl Larson died, she rang, and everybody knew you were on a party line. News traveled fast. Graduated on the steps of Polk State. They sat on the steps and looked at the lake, and we all sat on the lawn in front. And then by the time my brother came along, they're graduating. They were going to school in the Presbyterian church basement, and he graduated at the Presbyterian church.
We had a teacher who was a brand new teacher, and he was wonderful, Mr. Hawley.
He taught us how to speak Spanish. We all had Spanish names.
And he also had made a map of the United States with all the states and the capitals, and there was this electrical thing. You identify, okay, where's California? Where's the capital of California? You'd have to put it on Sacramento. I mean, it was brilliant.
And that was the year that we had an ice skating pond. There was a tennis court outside of the school. Jim Carriza's dad
Furnished the skates.
They made it so that it could hold water, and they flooded over that whole tennis court, and we all got ice skates somehow, and we could also wear them to class because it would take too long to put them on and off. By the time you took your skates on and off, recess would be over. So I think it was a way to keep us in our seats secretly, because they put newspapers over the floor so we wouldn't scratch the floor, and we clunk, clunk, clunk.
She remembers details that are... My dad let people charge their groceries during the winter.
Oh, all year. I would be sent to the store, and then I could pick out one 5-cent candy bar.
But you people had money because your dad had a business.
Well, that's true.
But he let...
A lot of money lending as well. They
were good about that, our dads.
Well, it was a sad day when we got the first stoplight.
Why?
Because we always kind of prided ourselves on not having stoplights, and then we got stoplights and more traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah, the traffic that started coming